Hello, and welcome back to the Geek on My Sleeve channel, where we learn how to human one book at a time. This is Geek Out number 135, The Anarchist Cookbook by Matt Dinniman. Yeah, I really enjoyed the book. This is the third one in the series, and I guess if you don't know the series, the spoiler-free or information about it, I would say, is the fact that it's kind of like a sci-fi meets fantasy, but then is trapped in urban-esque dungeon? I don't know. Anyway, let me explain. So, kinda like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, all of a sudden humanity finds, um, aliens reach out to humans and say, "Hey, you haven't paid your taxes, you didn't file the proper paperwork, takes over." But then for this instance or how they're collecting, they take people, put them into a dungeon, you've got to defeat things, go through the dungeon, but some of them are more technologically advanced, where they can interact with certain stuff, so it's kinda like sci-fi, but then we're fighting, like, goblins and orcs and centaurs, so it's kinda like fantasy, but then there's interesting logistical problems of, "Hey, we are advanced enough that we can create biological life, but this biological life has to play out for whatever its role is inside the dungeon. And how do we make it happen? So then we've got to introduce other elements that will help them do what we want them to do. I don't know. It's yeah, probably not the best description, but I'm enjoying it. And
Yeah.
yeah, now into spoiler free portion, unless Carl had more to say.
Well, I listened to a podcast where the author was interviewed, and the way he kind of describes it is it's a game show.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like you
yeah.
were describing, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy meets game show, where all of a sudden
Or
you
yeah, kinda
now
made me
have,
think Hunger Games, but yeah. It's more
yeah,
game
yeah.
show-esque where you can, yeah, sponsor
Well, I see
and
the Hunger Games vibes because I think in Hunger Games they also watch them too, right?
yeah, and
Like
they also
see
have
how they're
people
doing.
who, give them prizes or support them or whatever, whatever, but this
Right.
it's I guess the Anarchist Cookbook, this one takes it a little bit further out of the realm of, I guess, whimsical and gets a little bit more serious for me, where we end up
Mm-hmm.
learning a lot about what is going on in the world. Because for I want
Mm-hmm.
to say one, we have a little bit of whatever the other guy who runs a game show we get on, and we got what Carl's little piggy or whatever the snake. But then in this
Right.
one, we get to see that the whole elaborate train system is actually a
Symbol for
caricature
the
or
syndicate
a
or whatever.
adaptation of what I think of as like stargates or warp gates, where you go from one side of the universe to the other side.
Right.
But then it's all like a political cartoon and certain factions taking shots at other factions without really doing it. But then it's also taken like the crack Karen, they call her, and made her a caricature where it's like this is something that is happening in the universe,
Mm-hmm.
but it is played up a certain way
Yeah.
for the
Full
iteration.
full disclosure, I'm current through book 5. Going to do our best to keep the spoilers through the first 3. Um, but like you said, it's we've kind of been getting little glimpses of the wider universe up until now. And then book 3, we really start to get more of it, especially once he gets the cookbook, and you get to kind of see um, kind
How
of the
different
feedback and the,
factions run the dungeons and
yeah, yeah, as well as just one of the things that I like about the character Carl is he's not an overly complex guy, right? He's a simple guy with simple desires, yet he really latches on to the fact like you will not break me. I'm gonna
Yeah, and
overcome this, and we start to see some of the other quote unquote political factions involved in the universe as they go and sponsor these different individuals. Um, and then you throw in just everything else with the apocalypse and people being their more primal selves, or let their lizard brains loose as they try to make sense of this game show that they're a part of.
or yeah, and a lot of the so the earlier books we had oh, I can't remember their name, but it might have been like Maggie and her husband or whatever who ended up
Mm-hmm.
killing the daughter and whatnot. And like a lot of that was, you know, they didn't understand so much of the game show and the political intrigue. We had to see the revelation in book three here, where some of the other crawlers are, they initially thought, he was crazy and he was doing stuff, and the way he's portrayed on the media
Yep.
for the
Yep.
shock them so that it's entertaining, such as the only way he could operate one of the trains was to chop off the hands of one of the NPCs, and because he's an NPC, he'll respawn,
Mm-hmm.
and it just paints him in a poor light, and it's just more and more people are starting to understand the game, and then sci-fi is big on environmental pressures, and we're starting to see why the faction who's running it is trying to make shorter time windows. That way they can hurry up and cash out because they tried to stall the foreclosure by starting it, as well as just, some of the other big world intrigues. Because we know, I was a little disappointed we didn't get to see more of her. Oh, homeless lady driving the cart around who is secretly a part of a bigger organization. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I forget her name too, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and then we
Um,
ended up getting that faction as a sponsor, and
mhm.
I feel like in a lot of ways we just kind of glimpse the surface of like if we ever do get out. I don't think we're going to, and we're not going to see the ever expanding universe. I foresee um things going south, some legal jargon that allows the other company to take over the crawl and to change a lot of things.
Mhm.
Um,
I don't know. So much of that's already unlocked though with the AI. That's kind of been one of those things where the
or
showrunners only have so much control, right? And the rest of it's left to the AI.
Correct, but I could see the other faction taking over because for some of the rulings they had vetoed
Mhm.
or overturned things, and they're only allowed or allotted so many.
Yeah.
And I could see it altering or changing a couple things. Like Mordecai should be free soon here anyway because she's reached the appropriate floor and blah 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 and yada
Right.
yada.
Right.
But then we're also seeing a lot of like unfair, underhanded tactics, such as, oh, I'm drawing a blank. Is this the one where the singer gets taken out and blown up?
I think that was
Or
last
that's
book.
two? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, just a couple other unfair things. But I mean, they normally wipe them all out or get more people for the Potter anyway.
Right. Right. Yeah. This book it did really well, and I'm trying to think, was this how we found Matt Dinniman? Because this series, I kept seeing it pop up and recommended of how fun it
Or
was.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I it was Yeah, it kept being recommended through Audible as well
mhm.
as I encouraged because of Sound Booth Theater. And I'm
Yes.
sorry, but yet again, I need to download their app because it was very well done. It was beautifully done. For those who aren't in the know and or on Audible, I don't know if we can be friends. But if you want to become friends and get Audible, Sound Booth Theater is the difference between Lucas Arts Studio and full sound development and different voice actors for select roles, and the immersion level on a lot of their books is just phenomenal.
Hmm.
It typically doesn't work out that way due to the nature of the business where authors want to have both release pretty close together, and sound booth tends to take longer because they do a lot more with their production, but they have their own specific application where, for example, they took this book, they did it, and I think they had like a preview of if they were allowed to add extra sound elements and take a little longer. So one's like, hey, this is good, which it's still better than a lot of others. But yeah. Anyway,
Oh,
need
leaps and
to check it
bounds
out. We'll get
better.
back or come again.
Oh, the Sound Booth Theater's productions is leaps and bounds better than the Audible or the audio books we grew up on, where it's just some monotone guy reading it.
Correct. Like, I can understand why people don't like audiobooks,
Hmm.
but you probably didn't give it a fair shake. It's like hearing one song on the radio and being like, wow, I don't like this song, so I don't like music. The reality is, there is a vast repertoire of experiences that you can have, and you probably just need to try a different one.
True story. True story.
Yep.
Um,
So
yeah, this book was a lot of fun. Um, Again, read further ahead, but just the Anarchist Cookbook opens up a whole lot of potential possibilities, and kind of like how he got it was pretty cool. Go
I
ahead.
or that was one of the things that wasn't really explained here, and I'm interested to see how it comes about because it seems like the book is known by the AI, and the AIs are kind of like working together to give the people a fighting chance, as well as AIs develop a personality, as we know, and the AI is just trying to do its job. Meanwhile, everybody else is sticking their hand in the cookie jar and saying he
Mhm.
can't do certain things or doesn't code their quest correctly. So we run into other, issues. And
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not because like it sounded like it was a faction thing where one faction knew that he had Mordecai, so he wanted to take him off the board by introducing someone who had a scenario in Mordecai's Crawl, which we're getting like a little bit of snippets and backstory and more information to make him human and make us enjoy the character. I would like to see something completely off the wall where the other faction takes over and now all the employees are free, but not really because it's like a new iteration of you have to survive to be able to go back through it. I don't know. It'd be a little weird, but I want to see Mordecai join us more so. But
Yeah,
was it the
it,
AI or was it another faction? I guess is what I was trying to get to.
right. So we know that there's history there, and we've kind of like got bits and hints about it. And then it was a nice way to kind of take him out of the equation for this book and force them to do stuff on their own, as well as,
Change the potential pathing. Or due to
yeah,
his input, Carl probably wouldn't have taken as many chances and wouldn't have tried to save and develop because Mordecai's very much like, you can't save them all, just do your own thing.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That's what I was getting at because, you know, Mordecai has survived, it implies, yeah, thousands of years just with the way this works, several different cycles. And he has a very pragmatic approach to this where he's like, hey, if you're going to do this, you got to do what you can to survive. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You got to do what you can to survive. And Carl kind of has this struggle throughout the whole book where he's like, Pretty much it gets to the point where he's like, well, F it. Like, we are going to save them all. And the transition for where, for so many of the dungeon crawlers, all they know is what they see in the recaps and how Carl is being portrayed in these recaps, as this, you know,
Oh, and
unhinged, impulsive, loose cannon that just wants to blow blank up, right? And a lot of people are kind of standoffish towards him. And even again, when we have the moment where, oh, drawing a blank on names, was it Hecla and our Amazon queen or whatever, when she gets taken out, and you know
our Brynhild's daughter. Yeah, I think it is Hecla.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when she gets taken out, then everybody's like, oh my goodness, like just kind of feeding into that narrative. And then all of a sudden later on, like everybody's like, hey, you saved us. You didn't have to. Here's our
Or
hats. Go
and
go save them.
a lot of that, like, we got super lucky with who our manager was, and we
Mm-hmm.
got super lucky with all the other stuff, and then we got to see, oh, our old lady who is now a frost fairy.
Yeah,
She
yeah. Pervy
had,
old woman.
yeah, oh, Tiata? Something? Anyway, so she also got a manager,
Mm-hmm.
but their manager is not very helpful, and,
Treating it
eh
like a vacation
yeah,
versus, hey,
treating
we
it
got
like a
stuff to do.
vacation, and a lot of it, they lose system access, so if they don't already have the knowledge, and he's like I'm sorry, but Mordecai basically feels like the old cop who is week away from retirement. It has,
Mm-hmm.
a grandkid on the way or whatever. It's just it's throwing up a bunch of, like, beep, it's gonna go wrong and or death
Mm-hmm.
flags that I'm a little I don't know, life doesn't
It
play fair, and
No,
yeah,
it doesn't. It doesn't.
yeah.
And neither does the AI, but
Or
it
did my beep come through?
yes, it did. Um, so it's going to be
Or
interesting. I hope we get to see more of kind of the politics, even though I know that's not your favorite behind the scenes,
or
because we see.
this is intriguing because of the flavor of it. It's giving little snippets in ways to get us more invested without taking a whole, hey, this is filler episode Naruto arc style where we get the whole backstory.
Mhm,
And that has its time and place as well, but it's painting a bigger picture, and I like it for the explosive potential and how this is a dungeon crawl. This is probably going to finish the series, but what if it didn't? Maybe we get to see Carl helping out others. Maybe we get to see him make it all the way there. Maybe we get to see things taken over and things change and he gets out early. Maybe, just like there's a lot of potential variables and replayability, so to speak. Like, even if he does succeed, he's
mhm,
still what Mordecai got to 11 and nobody gets to 18, and just a couple other nuances, like we
right,
know how the old lady with the homeless lady with the shopping cart, like, is
mhm,
a double triple agent kind of deal, and
mhm,
yeah, just some of the other stuff. So it's a convenient way of blending the sci-fi, the fantasy, and the urban vibe. So there are a lot of things that typically don't join together very well, but he does a good job with how he uh, gives information.
yeah, yeah. A lot of fun, a lot of laugh out loud moments. Um, something that I found interesting getting the podcast is the loot boxes that they get. Supposedly, if you're a Patreon member, you get to vote on upcoming loot boxes in the
Okay.
story. So, like, I've been
That's
tempted to pick up a handful of Patreons before, but that's definitely one where I'm like, that would be worth it to me, not only to get the early chapters, but to get a say in the loot boxes. And he talked about how sometimes he's not an architect writer. He's very much a gardener, where if he knows the ending and the answers, like he kind of
kind of,
loses motivation to write. So
or
he knows kind of what he wants to do, but then when he gets some game breaking loot boxes, he's just like, oh man, you know, here you have people trolling.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
That, and then another thing I just like truly enjoyed in this one is seeing Katia, is that her name? Seeing her
yeah,
excel and explode in, potential. Just like the way they
she
added
practically
the
doubled her
backpack
level
and
this book.
oh,
Yeah,
what's
I
up?
thought she practically doubled her level this book, and I thought that was a fun game mechanic as Carl went to kind of break things with the backpack and everything
Or
else,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. It just makes me also concerned for like IRL or the real world in this scenario for them, where like they can genetically modify people so that they can absorb mass and they can
Hmm.
activate abilities and rush. And I understand that a lot of it's contained inside the AI, and we got to see a little bit of that with like the different trailers that we go to and how certain fields are active or aren't active. And
Right,
I didn't, there could be nuances, but yeah,
right.
like, we thought Superman was superhuman, but he wouldn't stand a chance because based off our strength stats or our modifiers for momentum or whatever, we outclass him.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Um, were you satisfied with the combat this book?
I Combat was good, but I more so enjoyed the variation of the ingenuity, and what I mean by that is Carl had electrical knowledge, and we got to see him use that, put the fuses on the train tracks to figure out which one was the live one, to engineer the train so that the we could shift the portals, and we summon Grawl or whatever, the Prince, who we had our spat with book one, and
Hmm.
we end up using him to clear out a bunch of the things, and just the oh, you're gonna throw something overpowered at us, and then just the whole oh yeah, for that scene in particular, the character development with Carl, and the bonds he's building, and all of that. Like, I combat was good, but a lot of it was more ingenuity and exploits, such as throwing the bubble shield and destroying a whole train, or yeah, the portal, or just other separate things. I guess
Yeah,
there still was quite a bit of combat, but it was more of a engineering space problem. And we also got to see Katya come into her own with the art major, and how it's like it's not linear. It's a bunch of noodles, but then you stuck the fork through them, and then some causal connection of how they're double sided, and just like the fact that we almost got completely owned, but there's enough of an overlap between different cultures and whatnot that we were able to kind of pull our bacon out of the fire. But a lot of people don't listen, and yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was
But
fun.
of course, due to us trying to win, and due to us, doing the mass communication bit, they're really trying to curtail that, or towards the end when it says drop into the next level that you're going to be zoned, and trying to stop everybody working together, because first two books they really try to dissuade people from working together by making them look manic and like he's laughing as he's chopping off hands and stuffing heads into his bag or whatever, but the reality
Right.
is different.
Right.
But yeah, I combat was there, but it was more like putting Katya on the front of the train, and differing mechanics for having the invisible bolts and the things that they do, and learning about the Brynhild's daughters and how it was all based off of one awesome piece of equipment that she got early on, and just the stats and the potential. And
Yeah.
I enjoy loot. Um, and then just like the overpowered, but you forgot to do it for like the feet thing. Like, oh, towards the beginning, he gets his foot hit or chomped or whatever, and then he's like, oh, oh, mine, starts freaking out because he didn't have his buff active. But then also later, because he had his buff active and his feet are invulnerable, he didn't feel the god prince maestro or whatever grab his foot. So it's like
Mm,
it is, it sucks that he didn't have it, but it also was a hindrance later, and it was just a good use of the environment elements.
yeah. You talked about how you enjoy the loot. I also get a kick out of the achievements, and
Yep,
how
yep.
just
The
because you
AI
get an
smart.
achievement doesn't mean you're actually going to get like a loot box sort of a deal. Like when they get the hoarder one or whatever, where it's like you have over 500 pieces of this clothing. You know, we don't reward this kind of behavior. Um, so yeah, like it's a fun way to kind of keep keep the mood
Yeah. Yep.
comical as all the other craziness is going down and around. So, speaking of craziness, were you able to snag those quotes?
I didn't get an opportunity to really look through them as well. I can click buttons though. See what
Okay.
happens.
Again,
Or
just
hold
give
on,
everybody a
let me slow it down. Had at 2.5. Let me go. What do we say? 1.5.
yeah, or 1 1/4 for those who haven't trained their ears or verbal processing
We watched in
capability.
horror as the monsters were overwhelmed, one by one, by a creeping, crawling wave of flames. We stood there in silence on the platform as the train picked up speed and disappeared into the tunnel. As it rumbled away, I could still hear Vernon's terrified final screams echoing in my head.
That was the worst prize ever.
So, scenario of what happened there. They're on the train. They get through the door. They're not supposed to go through it. They go up to the kiosk, and the guy's always losing luggage. So that's where I say like the urban fantasy elements, because it's a very real life thing. Like lost and found is a thing, and people lose stuff. And I yeah, train or not trains, planes and whatever. I guess it's trains, but the fact that you think you're getting a prize, but sometimes people, carry stuff that they don't need to, or whatever, and just
Mm-hmm.
the interesting urban elements.
Right. Yeah.
And then this is kind of a AI flavor thing.
In the dungeon. Why? Because drinking more would be cheating. And if anyone is going to cheat, it's going to be me.
I slid the potions over to Donut. She pulled them into her inventory. So
Yeah, just like the narration, like it sold it to me. It was just like, oh, happy go lucky. Oh well, here's why life is the way it is, and these are the parameters I'm operating inside. But if it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
happen, the serious, and yeah, the narration
Yep.
was good.
Yep.
AI elements, flair.
Yep.
interrupting.
Yep.
His tongue lashed out, fast as a whip. It attached to a metallic chair by the kitchen counter, and he launched it across the room at the newcomer. Chaco squealed and dropped the microphone, ducking as the chair rocketed at him. The chair froze in midair, a quarter of an inch from Chaco's head. It had been flung so hard that it had surely have broken the guy's skull open had it been allowed to connect. Chaco whimpered. I scrambled back. Donut hissed, and Mongo growled. For a moment, nobody moved. Realizing he'd been saved, Chaco slowly stood to his full height. I could see the large...
So this one is didn't finish it there, but essentially where Mordecai sees who the prize speaker is and kind of loses it. And this is we briefly talked about it earlier, how it's expanding our knowledge by giving us information from when Mordecai was going through the crawl. And we know a little bit about Audette, and we have a thing with her to go on to her shows, as well as this was another crawler that went through the crawl at the same time as Mordecai. And we've seen it before for the separation between, oh, they don't always know what's going on with everybody during the preparation time. And the only time Mordecai gets to hang out and see some of his friends is when he's not a manager and, whatnot. But yeah, it just was it still makes me wonder whether it was the AI's doing purposefully so that he could get the Anarchist cookbook, or it is a faction-based thing, because that would be my guess. If the AI has knowledge of it, and that's the only way he can get him the knowledge, and he's been following him, and he really likes him for his smush abilities, as well as other things, like
Or it
with
could be a bit of both, too, because, like, the
or yeah,
AI
if
has to
the
come from
situation
somewhere.
arose, what would he put in there or change?
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah.
But it's more than that, too. Each recipe is accompanied by a hilarious tale by the anonymous author, recounting some of the zany and madcap misadventures they experienced gathering these mouth-watering recipes. Fun for the whole family. This book is a real hoot.
Yep, I thought. You done fucked up. Oh, too bad. That looks like a stinker of a prize. Better luck next time. That's our show, everyone! Chaco cried. He gave me a baleful glance, then he disappeared. The music abruptly stopped. The living area reappeared. The scent of smoke lingered.
And then just the whole hidden fake out of the scenario, still the same scene there. He finally gets the Anarchist cookbook, and it's like, oh, it's about chicken recipes or whatever, and Donut loses it, and he, because of his sponsor, he has an implant, and he's able to see what is actually written on it, which is another underhanded thing where, like, where are all these people getting the AIs? Probably from the technologically advanced civilization that does all this other stuff. It was a good scene.
That. He insisted you were just south of us. I don't know why he thought that, but Brandon wanted to stick close to the stairwell and spend the days training close to the exit. They got into a fight, and several of the men left with Chris. This was right around the time you left the floor.
Ellie laughed.
Then Henry got pulled into an alleyway and banged some succubus witch who ended up giving birth.
I probably not need to do all that, but essentially, I cannot say too much about this because I have been further, but I will say it's about the camaraderie, because previous books we had Chris, who was helping out the not homeless, the elderly, and blah blah blah, and we were friends with them. And then we had I think of him as Silent Bob-esque alternate brother. Can't remember if it's older or younger.
Chris was the Silent Bob one. Brandon was the other brother.
Okay,
so he interacted with Brandon, who's dead. Chris is the one who's alive and a rock monster, not monster, rock person.
Yeah. But it's one of those pulling at your heartstrings kind of moments where we know that Brandon perished, and we know that there was a falling out with Chris, and just it expresses how narrow our view is for, like, what is happening around us and just all the chaos. But there's a lot of other people and factions and political intrigue and interest behind the scenes. But I would say it is a great foreshadowing element, and that is all I will say on that aspect.
I was about to say, like, we've said it before with other series. Since I'm up to book 5, going back and re-listening to it again, I'm like, oh, like here are the breadcrumbs.
Yeah,
Here
yeah.
are the pieces. Pay attention to the details and
Yeah.
see what's up.
Definitely adds to
So,
the rereadability.
yeah.
NPCs of this class inflict 20% more damage against you due to your goblin pass.
Level 125? Holy shit. I also noted the lack of the usual, this is a non-combatant NPC in her description.
Princess Donut.
Astrid said, coming to hover over us. Her deep, serious voice didn't seem as out of place with her fairy appearance as one might expect.
On behalf of management, I'd like to personally apologize for our security's inexcusable failure. While we guarantee no one's safety within this establishment, that changes the moment someone employs personal security. You have my word that this will be dealt with swiftly.
She looked over her shoulder to
So I think we had the bookmark a little late there. The scene that just played out is they were at the I can't remember the club that at Spankswisher or the other one. Anyway, they're at the club, and Donut was dancing, had the bodyguard, and this is where Donut gets her first player killer skull, and someone had backstabbed her because we find out due to the knife would have had crazy damage, but due to her cockroach ability where she survives the first fatal damage, which is an element that I'm thoroughly enjoying for the whole like class canon and just all the chaos that could possibly be happening. Yeah, just interesting scene. And then yet again more of the I guess urban or people element. Carl ends up asking the owner of the establishment, be like, hey, you run your business how you want. I'm going to ask that you don't punish these too harshly and that they are the ones who accommodate or that they follow us or help us out every time we're here. And it's a twofold thing. Like, they know they messed up, so they want to keep their jobs and do better, as well as thank you for helping us out. We're not going to suffer the same punishment. And on top of, if he was not to do it and they suffered a punishment, other people in the establishment, you know how employees talk or whatever, that then he would end up with someone who was upset that they were the reason that a coworker got punished or whatnot. So it's just more of the learning how to human, and it's not black and white or the surface level stuff. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed the elements there.
I agree. I agree. And I really believe stuff like that holds true, right? So often in, situations like that, the Karens of the world want to jump on people. But, a lot of times people do appreciate that, quote, second chance, especially when it was something outside of their control. And we get to see it later. Like, they end up buying spells to try to help out and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and that's where, and for me, intent matters. Like, I do, but don't really care what you did. I care like what your motivation or intention was behind it, because you may have had the best intentions, but could not see all the other factors and may have had a negative consequence or outcome. But what was, the intent behind it?
Yeah.
Naming scheme for Princess Donut's fan group.
Or something.
How about the donut holes?
Don't be crude, Carl.
Below, one of the Mongos exploded as he accidentally touched a hunk of metal attached to the third rail. The second...
So, yet again, another great foreshadowing element, and then really brings home the whole game show host thing, or game show environment for she's got a following, and it's a kind of a variation or an odd persona, because you have a bunch of humans, and then you've got a couple people who came in, like the goat lady and whatnot, but the majority of the elements are human. So to see a cat and her being all hoity-toity or whatever, being a princess, and just like, yeah, the dichotomy between Carl and Princess Donut, and just the following, and Odette and everything else.
Team Donut Holes. I forget what the other one the other following was, or the other name for that,
I
but Team
enjoyed that
Donut
one.
Holes all the way.
Ba, ba, ba.
Train is running on dead babies. Holy crap, that's fucked up.
Child, you are just in time.
Firebrandy said. She spoke loudly over the roar of the train. She had an odd accent, almost German. It was a peculiar juxtaposition with her appearance.
Something happens to the engineer and that Kotzbroken war mage. They go splat. See that valve there on the top left? Will you turn it for me? The idiot didn't release that valve, and I can't control it from here.
This one?
That's right. Turn it left. Turn it all the way. Yes, very good.
One of the 5
And so, like, I just absolutely love this scene for multiple reasons. So, aliens, biological makeup, you are a flame elemental type thing. And then weird scenario-esque thing where while having babies, if they perish, they are now a fuel, which IRL version, I think of like cows, where when cows have a baby, they produce milk, but then we continue to pull the milk so they continue to make the milk, because if the baby's going to continue to drink the milk, the mom's going to continue to produce it. And it's just like, that's the IRL version of things, but this is a sci-fi, and then like to combine it with it is how the train operates.
Cows to harvesting dead babies?
It was a utilizing animals and their birthing process to
just called
have a windfall.
This is a sentient woman who. I'm giving you a hard time.
It was an amalgamation of a bunch of different things that I thought was interesting that you normally wouldn't see smashed together.
I like the whole concept of how the NPCs are actually alive. And it really just that whole concept that here we have essentially slaves that aren't slaves, right? Like certain people who were born outside of dungeons have a different set of, rights, if you will.
We got a very good description in book 2 when we got into the club and the whole differing sections, and he's like, wait, you mean there aren't brothels full of genetically created, whatever? And he's like, no, that's illegal, but we do here.
Right.
But yeah,
right.
And that's what
isn't that like most governments and laws everywhere, where it's like, yes, but let's go over here and
yes. And my best example is
I love your analogies. Let's compare cows,
Vegas or other things. Like, it's illegal to gamble. But if you're in international waters, such as, I think it's Blue Chip or no, not that one. Anyway, if there's, scenarios of which we can circumvent it, such as Native Americans. And on their, I can't think of the verbiage, and I'm sorry, but it's not a resort. It's, what is it? You know what I'm talking about. How...
Loot crates? Gambling for children? What?
Anyway, so yes, there are rules and they serve a purpose, but it's kind of like that Pirates of the Caribbean.
As long as there's money involved, we can exploit and find ways around said rules and laws.
Yeah. Just like going to the carnival or whatever. You're a trap market. You paid to get in. You're not going to leave. So we're going to jack up the food because...
Want some water? Cough up $15 for this.
Yeah. Or $3 for a bottle, and you're like, I get this out of my sink at home.
I was about to say, what kind of carnivals are you going to? Like, you got to at least break out at 10 to get a bottle of water. Most ones I go to, especially with recent inflation. You kidding me?
I will say it's been a while, and that was when I was younger. I haven't experienced
several cycles around the sun ago, maybe 10 or 15.
Yeah, when I get into that double digits, it just kind of all blurs together.
Yeah. You have to go check your achievements page to see your character stats and where you're at? I hear
Yes,
you. I hear you.
there are some days in life I wish I had one. Mm, ooh,
You
this
don't?
was what?
You don't? I do.
I do, but I forget to update it, so it's not very accurate. And then I also
Mm.
don't experience the passing of time. So yeah,
What is time anyway? I mean, you just got to upgrade that bed to a premier hammock, and you only have to sleep for 2 hours to be fully rested. You get a buff.
hammock equals life, and if you don't sleep in a hammock, we need to have a conversation. But for right
Uh,
now, this was
hashtag hammock
another
life.
element that was a great one.
Prism Industries capacitating and focusing goggles. Special high fashion edition. The Princess Donut. This is a unique item. This one-of-a-kind item was a gift from Princess Donatia of the Prism Kingdom to Princess Donut of the Blood Sultanate. It was personally signed by Princess Donatia. Protects the eyes from a variety of environmental hazards, including magic-based attacks that render the user blind. Enhances all dark vision effects. Allows for heat vision and other visible light viewing options. In addition, any energy-based spell that originates from the ocular region is caught and focused by these goggles, which allows for multiple combat and targeting options.
Holy shit, I said, reading it a second time.
It turns my magic missile into a laser! I can shoot 4 at the same time! I've been standing on the back of the MOV platform, and when the doors open, I can shoot inside 4 doors at once. It can even hold on to the energy of one shot and add it to the next. Plus, they're beautiful. I look like Miss Beatrice. Don't you just love them?
Those are pretty good, I agreed. I wondered how much it cost Donatia to get the box to Donut.
So a lot of just like elements that I just thoroughly enjoy it. So already Donut has the map thing where if it's close, you can kind of like see it on her map, and now she can see in
Mhm.
like different views to see ghosts or hidden elements or whatever, on top
Mhm.
of kind of like modifying an ability that she already has. So she has Magic Missile, which is a staple and a classic, but now it's into shooting multiple beams and kind of like to space it out and just like adding a variation to a classic, which I thoroughly enjoy. And then the downfall of us all is environmental damage or flashbangs or other obscure things that we do, such as Carl putting up his bubble shield and wiping out trains, that I see some interesting ways to really utilize it.
I was about to say, like, we would have so much fun just exploiting those mechanics and then some. Um, but yeah, yeah. If you guys are curious to see what Princess Donut looks like with those killer shades, book 5, The Butcher's Masquerade, you get to see Donut on there with those bug-like looking sunglasses. And again, this is kind of that foreshadowing that I'm waiting to see it pan out with the different factions and like what do they know that we don't know, because those sunglasses saved the day when we were on the train, right, when we meet up with the daughters and everybody, those hidden
Or
bolts.
yeah, to see the invisible bolts. Yep.
And Donna's just such a pure soul as much as she's Donut.
Or yeah, and that's sci-fi. The way they're all from Earth, okay? And there's a certain flavor of Earth that we're trying to portray here. But we have Miss McGibbons or whatever, who is an old lady who apparently did a lot of drugs as well as was a raging alcoholic at times, but has survived through everything because they just don't make them like they used to. But she has now had some of her dementia resolved by becoming a ice fairy, and now she has definitely got her youth back, as well
Oh,
as is sticking icicles up places and is a little more aggro than I would think a ice fairy would be. But it's interesting adaptation. Meanwhile, Princess Donut was essentially a show cat and pampered and taken care of, and she acts like a haughty, princess, but she's still very young. And I think of it kind of like dog years or cat years, or when people say dogs age faster or whatever. And short version is it's all about us, the human, the master race, but not really because aliens. But then due to her being so young and not used to the culture or whatever, she's, a little too trusting at times and coming into her own. And
Well,
yeah,
we get to see some of that baggage unpacked as we go. But yeah.
I don't know if I have this in the right spot, but this thing.
Males. The evening gown is to demonstrate their ability to mix with society, and the question and answer portion is to prove mental fitness. The goal of each pageant contestant is to attract the highest quality male and have him inject them with his superior sperm in order to create the most viable offspring. After they receive the gift from a genetically superior male, they oftentimes find a lower quality male, a beta, to help raise the child. Judges for these pageants are usually a mix of ultra-alpha males and former contestants who are well past their prime. These women are oftentimes referred to as roasties. A roastie is common human parlance due to their genitals being irrevocably damaged by multiple sexual partners. These roasties are honored and desired only by the male beta members of society, as evidenced.
Okay, sorry, we're trying to keep it PG. Anyway, the scenario we're painting is or at least 13. Anyway, this is a side segment outside the dungeon where Carl and Donut are asked to jump in a sound booth to read some lines, and they're supposed to help tell people about Earth's culture, which is no longer a thing because we completely destroyed about it. And it's very much the way of the artist, where you're not really famous until you're dead. But I digress. It's just
Sounds like
it
the
was
AI got all its material from Reddit, which
yeah.
is a fairly reputable source of information. But
Reddit for me is more of the human element because I feel like, for example, Amazon reviews are fake because people will pay money. YouTube reviews are tweaked and critiqued because people will pay for clicks and views. Reddit is more, hey, I've got a question. Insert too many trolls here. Let me ask a different subculture group, and it seems to be more honest, but to each their own. And then that scene there was beautifully done for the excerpt at the end. If you don't know, Audible, where you get the little sound booth theater snippet, and you get the banter back and forth between the author and the sound booth crew, and I enjoyed it.
I love it, and the later books are so much fun. Just wait until you get to book 5. The ending there, just
is that the musical number one?
Chef's kiss, yes,
Okay,
yes,
yeah.
like
that's
yes.
where you really, that's the difference between like well and like top shelf.
Yep. Fun fact, the author is actually, at least on the podcast I listened to, in 2 bands in addition to being an actual artist.
Music and sound
and a
design
writer.
and stuff makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah.
I'm trying to figure out where I'm at here.
Chris? Imani's crew hadn't had any interactions with Frank and Maggie as far as I knew. I told them the story, of course, especially after everything that had happened on the Maestro's show. Was that why? That didn't seem like the Chris I'd known. But Imani and Ellie had said he'd changed. I remembered Brandon's last words about his brother. I had the message pasted into my scratchpad, and I found myself reading that last message, especially the part about Chris, over and over.
Tell him I love him. That's the most important part. It's always been the most important part. But I didn't realize it until it was too late.
I sent a quick note to Imani and Ellie, telling them what happened and asking her if they'd managed to get Chris to talk. They didn't answer right away. They were likely asleep.
So I think I missed it or didn't put it in the right spot. For that scene, it's essentially emphasizing between, we talked about it earlier, the 2 brothers who we helped out, and they were helping out the elderly people, and then one of them died and they separated. But I have it noted for the PvP coupons, and we know about them because after Donut got the first player killer skull, she got a coupon for both Carl and eats metal, art major, changes her face,
Tatia?
Katia, and that was asking or emphasizing like why other people haven't said stuff about him, and yeah.
Yeah.
Trying
Yeah.
something, and whatever it was, it didn't work. We don't want to fight her.
You tried to kill Kofia, you fucking bitch!
Donut cried. She blasted a full-strength magic missile right into Hekla's face.
Hecla, that was her name, Brynhild's daughter, and just like being put into this kind of environment and only being able to work off of the information you're given, and that being very skewed or poor information for several reasons. Yeah. And then later we figure out it was a good character development moment for Donut and just her growing up and whatnot, yada yada, as well as this was a big powerhouse. I want to say one of the top 10, and had a lot of people with her, but then we understand why due to the weapon that she got, which, yeah, made a lot of sense. And it brings it all back around to kind of like the cookbook where he has knowledge due to this item. How are other people getting knowledge? What else is slipping through? What is AI helping out with? Yeah.
I just appreciate how loyal Donut is at the end. Yeah. Good companion to have.
I'm not even a little okay. Nothing about this is okay.
She rubbed her eyes, looking about the gore-filled room.
God damn it. There's nowhere to sit down and have a breakdown in here.
We all just looked at each other and started to laugh. There was no reason to laugh. None of this was funny. But we laughed. We laughed long and hard. It didn't make sense. None of this made sense, but we were alive. For now, at least. And we had each other. And that was something. The moment ended as quickly.
That was supposed to be
you ever have moments
essentially
like that?
Katya, there's a guy who I used to work with who has tattoos on his hand, and they're clowns, and one is crying and one is laughing, and it's the whole some days you just gotta laugh to keep from crying kind of deal. Yeah, it's generationally, for my generation, it's so bad it becomes good, and some days you just need to bury it all deep inside and do the inverse, because yeah. That's why I had ulcers as a kid, because I just kept trying to bury it deeper inside, and it turns out there isn't any deeper. Just starts exploding inside your organs, melting through your stomach lining, and dissolving yourself from the inside. But laugh some days.
Just need to get that loot crate where you can get a pocket dimension.
I mean, that was a different one. That's more Perfect Run, but
Carry on.
That's a similar sci-fi with IRL. Humans suck. Psychos are people. Yeah, here we go.
How? You pull the tag off, like a grenade, and then you throw it. Takes about 10 seconds for it to work. Depending on what it is, it'll fight for you. Or, like I said, attack you. The rarer it is, the longer it lasts. When they're done, if they haven't been killed, they turn back to the beanies, but the tag is gone, and you can't use them again. If they do get killed, the little beans fly everywhere when they die and then disappear. That's crazy. We only have one. It's a dude riding a horse, named Chimeras. How did you figure it out?
So this is a weird scene for me because it hurts my soul a little bit, because you want to keep those beanie babies in mint condition and keep the tags, and the value is just so much more. But I enjoy the ever expanding lore and creative use of items, and it is an interesting summoning thing, as well as unique IRL. If I could do something else, or if there was aliens, what would they do with it? and then it also potentially more foreshadowing for the guy, I'm sorry, I forgot his name already. He was just talking to has another Beanie Baby that is in a box, but that box is what Carl took out the Beanie Baby from to have the book 2 Carl's Doomsday scenario where it will explode. And then since we're improving our sapper stable and our bomb stuff, I foresee potential in the future.
And still, the red spray didn't let up. It hit the ceiling and all the far walls, like it was being sprayed from a multi-directional pressure washer. Mongo shrieked in joy, spinning about like a child in the rain. It kept coming for 20 full seconds before trickling to a stop.
Just that
Katya
scene.
just stood there in the middle of the room.
Well, so this scene, Katya is slender manned herself, or manned herself really tall to clean blood off the wall, and she's like, how does blood even get up here? And there's an update that goes through that says, oh, you're no longer allowed to keep liquid in your inventory unless it's inside of a container. Well, previously, she was the scoop or the cow catcher of the train, had been collecting the blood and all of the stuff so that it wouldn't get, clog it up and stop it. And it's just
Plus
like
levels
the
of
irony and the just
Yeah.
it was, you won, but I'm gonna get you back. So it was interesting. And
yeah.
how did this even happen? And then it
Yep.
smacks you right in the face. I'm right
Yep.
like this.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. There was another LITRPG series that we were talking about where things kind of change. So then, like, the game
Or
mechanics
Apocalypse
change.
Skate, probably,
Yeah.
because it was essentially, hey, you are on a game show or you are a creature or whatever, but there's developers and you are on a game show because we're trying to get funding by you doing select things or not doing select things. We're trying to balance the game. And there was a lot of, changes where some of it you got grandfathered in and others it just, didn't work out for you.
Right.
Don't know what I put for this one. We'll see.
Wow, I see it now. The Krakeran is a real creature. It is a collective mind,
yeah.
and it is spreading throughout the universe. Its proliferation causes a lot of anxiety. A better translation of its name is the Apothecary because of its ability to synthesize elements. When they call it the Krakeran, it's them deliberately bending the translation into a negative. What we have here in the dungeon is a caricature. He pointed to one of the stations where Katya had written, drug dealer. They have the Krakeran making the drugs, and the Puka are the ones handing it out. I think the Puka are supposed to represent the Plenty. They are a caprid race. They look like goats. We hadn't seen or fought the Puka, but I remembered that Ellie and Imani had. They were the ones who gave the addictive vitamin shot to the mobs. Ellie had described them as goblin things that turned into giant goats when you fought them. Mordecai continued. The Plenty invented the modern tunneling system. It's only been around for a few hundred seasons, but it allows near-universal real-time communications. The technology is proprietary, and nobody knows how it works.
So I just enjoy the ever-expanding lore and just how it's all working and expanding, and how it's trying to add the opposite. And I talk about this with a couple other books where you have like a real serious, like this is life and death for us. Like we may die and we need to survive to have a chance, and blah 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 yada yada. But at the same time, they're trying to add the comedic relief or the comical elements for their viewers through caricatures and whatever. But due to us not knowing anything of the ever expanding universe, it's a way to kind of introduce us to the elements if we ever do get free, or how trying to understand how the aliens think and where they're coming from and what political behind the scenes things might happen.
Anytime an author takes the time to start explaining different aspects of the universe, might be worth paying attention to the details, right? Like, this doesn't seem super relevant, but maybe it will be later,
Yeah, and we got to see it with book one. They kind of they had like the juicer where it was more of a introducing new or earth elements of the juiced up Jim Bro and the whole conversation, or the hoarder, and just how that was an interaction. But now that we're getting deeper into the dungeon and the later floors, we're introducing other, I guess, cosmic elements. I guess we had the Crack Aaron thing early book one too, but yeah, they're trying to appeal to a wide variety of viewers. Ba, ba, ba.
Warnings had chosen not to protect themselves. I couldn't believe people could have gotten this far and still remain such idiots. We were ready for an onslaught of the monsters to pour out of our own stairwell station and come at us. We all waited, weapons ready. Imani barked at the flamethrowers, telling them to be on the lookout.
Or so for this scene, this is right after the gravity inverts, and we've got the upper and the lower tracks that follow inside the noodles, and like the whole build up and everything for this I really enjoyed, because on one side Mordecai figured it out due to the real life things like this name equals this and that name equals that, but then due to the art major and information we had for that, we were able to get when you do the problem wrong, but you get the right answer kind of scenario, but not really, or multiple answers to the same equation. And just like I enjoyed the diverging thought processes of how they came to a similar or the same conclusion, as well as just one problem with life for me today is TikTok is a cancer, but I also try to research the information that I hear. It's kind of extrapolating upon when I was a little boy. Wikipedia was not a valid resource or source. They're getting better. Life is a thing, and yada yada. But now we're running into it IRL where TikTok is not a valid source. But it is information that then you can research on your own and expand and find information. So I totally understand people being like, I'm here. I'm at the stairs. Like, why would I leave? What are you talking about? That makes no sense to me. But if they researched or had access to the same information, would make more sense. But yeah.
I'd argue even, quote, valid sources, you should always do more research and verify, right? The same argument of his story is,
Written
his,
by the
like,
victors.
yeah, like one person's story. Go find somebody that challenges that
everybody
belief.
always thinks
Yeah.
like they're justified in war or they're justified doing it for their reasons, when if you look at Brandon Sanderson does it best. Side tangent.
Yeah.
Or I guess Wreck-It Ralph has a good like quotable one. Just because I'm a bad guy doesn't mean I'm a bad guy. It's situation, circumstances.
Or the difference between
Maybe
a villain and a
Bowser or
hero,
King
right?
Koopa was just trying to save his kids because this random plumber from another world who came down this pipe was jumping on their heads. Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah.
And yeah, Brandon Sanderson does it well with his twist. I will not be saying more. Sounds like he's expanding Miss Thorn series, right?
I
He's
believe
adding
so.
more to the second arc, or he's creating a third arc.
Yeah, I can't remember if I've already pre-ordered it or I just added it to my wish list. We have like over 200 books in our wish list, and Audible gets me every time with their sales. Sorry, not sorry. Please continue to support our audiobook buying habits. You're welcome.
Mordecai, I don't care what it is. If it's a Carl idea, it's probably a brilliant idea that's going to get you killed. Donut told me about how you captured the nightmare train. I bet you thought that was a glorious idea too. Carl.
I need that
No,
on a
that
t-shirt.
was a dumb idea. This is much better.
I So
Just cross it out the C for K.
IRL, my catchphrase is I'm pretty good at breaking things. And in reality, I can't fix it or solve a problem until I break it and I take it all apart, understand how it works, and then I'll put it back together. Occasionally, the process of breaking it gets interrupted by other real life events, and now I have a slew of parts every which way, and people see it as broken, or I see it as ADHD never got back to the project, but I know how to fix it now if this error ever occurs again. So yeah, and long story short, or getting back to the book, um, he has another scene here where it's like, oh, something blew up, and they're like, Carl, was that you? You're always doing this. You're always blowing stuff up. And it's like, why do you always think it's me? It's like, well, the reality is, it probably was. Yeah, it's it. Yeah, getting to know people. Oh,
I finally realized how much I needed other people. Donut jumps to my shoulder.
How long before we know if it worked?
A line of notifications appeared. Experience notifications flew past, one after another. It worked. Hey, Katya. Bad news.
Oh yeah? What's that?
I'm a higher level than you now. I just hit 4.
So this scene is right after Carl's gloves. If he hits a follower of whoever, it has a percentage chance of summoning the god, and he is trying to exploit it by summoning the god because he knows who it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be the Carl's little piggy, the guy he had a beef with, book one. And he wants to
Prince
use
of the
that,
Skull
you
Kingdom or
know,
something.
yeah, that rage and whatever, and this overpowered entity in combination with the portal ability, blah, blah, blah. And this is where his invulnerable feet buff actually goes sideways because he can't feel the god grab his feet. And then he gets pulled through. He's like, no, remember the mission at all costs, save yourselves. And of course, they're, no man left behind kind of mentality. And they go and they help him out. And it's a great character development moment for Carl. And we get to see kind of like snippets of his past and his stuff with his mother and father. And, we got to see the origin with the relationship with Donut's owner and whatever. But he generally is always trying to help people, and he's not ever expecting it to be reciprocated due to other IRL events. And it's just, it's a growing moment for him, as well as just all worked out. And I want to say that's actually the last one I had marked, or we had marked. But yeah, it was. I enjoyed it because it was a weird adaptation of a dungeon because it was on trains, but then it was very beautifully sci-fi where the trains were a variation on the traveling in the solar system, and then we got more of what's happening outside the game, as well as just it was a good one. I think it was the first book that we didn't go down multiple floors as well.
Yeah, it's starting to slow down, which I can appreciate. I really can.
Or it makes sense though, because each floor only has so many days. Each later floor is supposed to get more days.
Mm-hmm.
So on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A couple other things that I thought was interesting about this book is he went with the primal race, which we don't know a whole lot about. By doing that, he takes a ding to his stats. So this book is the first book that he kind of breaks even on what he would have been if he kept himself a human class, with the additional benefits there. Tatia, she pretty much is like officially part of our party now, which is kind of cool. The information network expanding in this book with the humans, I think, has a lot of potential for future floors, as well as kind of connecting with some of our old friends. Oh, we didn't talk about the ring meeting up with the
Yeah,
one
that.
that has some potential too.
So it's kind of the same feel for kind of like the Brynhild's daughter thing, where based off of more women in the party, she got crazy buff stats for her crossbow, and then essentially she just stacked her whole team with healers to support her, and it was kind of like a one-trick
Hmm.
pony scenario thing.
Right.
Meanwhile, um, oh, it was the guy who earlier tried to kill us, and his daughter ended up dying, but we get to see the other side of the scenario. And this is where, like, you did bad things, but you may not be a bad person. And long story short, the daughter didn't want to do anything with this, didn't want to kill people, didn't want to, harm goblins, whatever, whatever. And this was a big
Hmm.
culture shock for her. So, in being a parent and trying to keep them alive and have their stats grow and blah, 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 yada, yada, ended up getting the ring, which if you mark someone and you kill them, you get additional stats. So, it's a way to kind of like compound or, power level, so to speak. But the
Hmm.
hindrance or the caveat is then you can't heal. So then it puts the mother choking her out, killing her in a different light.
Yes. Yes.
And then the whole like after the loss of a child and the separation of a wife, the guy is essentially, no longer a threat. And he has also lost an arm or something. So the whole
Yeah.
like I did what I had to do to and it in a light it is justified, but yeah, then the way to get back is to give him similar circumstances, and
Hmm.
then just Mordecai's horrible
His
reaction.
Yeah.
And
His
then,
outlook on revenge too. The one guy's like,
yeah,
"This is my revenge," right?
and another thing that I like about this book is it takes the stats and applies them in a way. And what I mean by that, completionist chronicles, sidestep, if you have a negative modifier, you like can't really perceive reality correctly. For example, if you have low wisdom as a barbarian or whatever, whatever, because that's not your strength build. So why would you put stats into wisdom? If you have low
Hmm.
wisdom, you can't actually perceive what people are saying. Or same thing with
Hmm.
perception, like people may be right in front of you or stealth figures and you can't see it. And it does a fun job having your stats be relevant. In this one, we had to see kind of like, oh, Donut and her charisma and how she's able to talk to NPCs and influence them a certain way, and just how we have different scenarios when Carl's talking to him versus when Donut's talking to him. And we
Hmm.
get to see kind of the opposite, where the ring is subtly influencing his subconscious due to X, Y, and Z, or we get to see, yeah, the different races affect how
Yeah.
people feel and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Let's
could
see what
talk all
else.
day. Don't know if we really did it justice, but and I've enjoyed the series. Going to be continuing it. Just need to figure out when.
Yeah, and as always, and as we've said on previous streams slash podcast, your feedback goes a long way, guys. We know that we start a lot of series, even though we may continue them and not always bring them up on our rotations. If you want to see stuff again, let us know. Give me an excuse to get Peter off of the exclusive Lit RPG train. I would gladly go back and play in
We have
some.
not done Lit RPG the past like 2 times. I guess this could be one.
Okay, okay.
And
Not
then the perfect run.
specifically, but it's still in the same lane, maybe just one over, same road, just a different lane. Anyway. Um
Yeah.
I would love nothing better to go back and pay some tribute to some of the classics. And we have been talking to a couple of our other book talk, book-ish nerds. So probably get some of those guys into the rotation in the near future. But as far as the next 2 weeks upcoming, you know, he knew what I was rambling about and then acts all surprised when we're here. But
Right,
the
yeah.
book that Peter thought was this week, but is actually next week, Side Quest Retribution Awaken Online. Take it
By
away, Pete.
Travis Bagwell. So, spoiler free pitch is it is the series. Anyway, sidestep. This book is a side quest. VGO, or Breeding Gate Online, is another series that does really well in essentially you build a party, but there's a lot going on in the world, and then it does side series, and in the other book, the side series, every person is a main character. And this one, it's done a little different. We get moments where our main character and our main party is doing stuff, and then we kind of get like snapshot updates like, oh, I went and I did this thing. And so it's not VGO does kind of like a everybody's their own main character from the beginning origin story series, where then it overlaps with the main one. For this one, so far, as this is the first side quest in this, it is a update on what we missed while we were doing other things. And the scenario is kind of so lit RPG, except for you're not trapped inside the game, and this series does well with bettering yourself. So the AI, its main premise is to get people to play the game more. People are a complexity of psychological noodles, and they need or outside influence to better themselves. And the magic system kind of follows where the AI explains it like each one of the magic systems is humans. So desire or whatever, and it breaks it down into several different things. And yeah, I don't know. I'm struggling not spoiling stuff. What do you have to say about Awaken Online?
It's a lot of fun. There's a good reason why if you get into lit RPG space, Awaken Online comes up a lot. It's refreshing not to be in another quote typical isekai type series, and yet the writing does a good job where I still care about what's happening out in the real world. There's some other series that you kind of have a bit of both, and it's like, this is just a distraction. Let's get back to the game. Where with this, it does a good job keeping me interested in both meat space and digital space. A lot of fun. I haven't done this book yet, but I'm looking forward to getting the side quest. From my
Oh,
understanding, this happened because he was trying to flesh out some of the backstory because we focus on the main character Jason in the main series, and this will should be a fun little diversion.
yeah, yeah, and that's another good literary device or tool for how he does it. Oh, it's hard to do kind of like an omni viewpoint thing, and we definitely have a main character and follow him. But yeah, it's a good way to add other elements in a way that we can then take this information and take it back. And it's on the shorter side, so that's a thing. But you know, I felt like it did well, and it fits in nicely with the chronological order book. Essentially being book three because the end of book three and the end of book two kind of end up in the same spot, but in book two, there's a gap where we don't get to see this part of our party, so it's a good addition or way to catch us up. And then after that, we have Viridian Gate, Doomforged. I'm trying to remember which book this is. I want to say it's up there. We're further in the series. Yeah, I enjoy the VGO. It's more hardcore or more traditional lit RPG in the sense that meteors are destroying the Earth and the apocalypse has come, but we're being saved by video game developers, and they have created a system that we can get in a pod, and there's a chance for nanobots to go through our brain and assimilate us into the world. So this is our new world forever. As well as the AIs are repurposed AIs from foreign nation military stuff for doing whatever, and it's just and it does a pretty good job of just because I'm a bad guy doesn't mean I'm a bad guy. And
Yeah,
it follows kind of the main character is more of a dark paladin. So
I appreciate the fact that it breaks away from your typical main character class, which is something I can appreciate. One of the things when I was really heavy into the fantasy space, I got really tired of just another Lord of the Rings clone, right? Like there are tropes out there. Not all tropes are bad. They're fun, they're comfortable, but every now and then you just want not necessarily something like game breaking, but different and fun. And this series is another one of those that we got recommended countless times when we were coming into the lit RPG space. And again, just like I said for the last book, Awaken Online, there's a reason why Viridian Gate Online is seen as one of the big OGs of the space. James A. Hunter, incredible author, love his stuff. We've read several of his series, and I'm looking forward to wrapping this one up and moving on to the side quests as well.
yep. But yeah, that's next to coming up. Gonna be trying to stick with the 7 p.m. Eastern Wednesday, so in a week. Thank you again for everybody who caught it live. Thank you if you made it this far, catching it on the replay. Yeah. Hope to geek out with you here soon. Bye.
Bye.